Are we good on the, we're good, yeah, okay. Let me start by saying welcome everyone to the February board meeting where we do the business that needs to be done. The board went into executive session at 6 o'clock to discuss two matters. Before we begin our regular business this evening, I assume all of you know we're a community grieving at the moment. As I'm sure you have all heard, Darrell Dewar, or Mr. Darrell, passed away on Tuesday at the end of the school day. A shock for all of us, no more so than the kids who loved him and he loved in return. One of the most beloved members of our Yellow Springs district family, and he will be sorely, sorely missed. So I would actually like us to start with a moment of silence in recognition of everything that Mr. Darrell meant to kids here at Yellow Springs. Thank you. Okay. And with that sad bit of business out of the way, I can also report that if you are interested further in the service for Darrell, we have information about that that's circulated to staff and teachers.
Do we want to say it now?
Is that appropriate?
Yes, she said please share.
Very well then, so please go ahead and share if you have the address.
Services for Mr. Darrell will be next services, a visitation. Next Wednesday evening from 4 to 7 p.m. at the House of Wheat on Gettysburg in Dayton. And his daughter knows how loved he was at Yellow Springs and how much he loved Yellow Springs. So this is a recognition of that. So everyone is invited. It is public. So.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll get on with, as I said, with our regular business now, which starts with the approval of the minutes of our last board meeting. Do I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections?
Motion.
I went first.
Aida.
Okay. So there's.
Any editorial matters to attend to? Okay, call the roll, please.
Mayor Hemick?
Yes.
Ellison?
Yes.
McQueen?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Khan?
Yes. We're going to move on now to item 3.2. I want to acknowledge everybody present. Thank you all for coming out on this increasingly cold evening. I want to note that there is a sign-up sheet, as there always is in the back table. We like to have a record of who's come to visit, so please make sure that you put your name on that. We'll move to items under 4, board communications. And I don't think we have any, well, I guess we have one board communication available if you want that. And now is the time in the meeting when we invite anybody to come and address the board in a public comment session. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes so that others have a chance to make their comments as well. My colleague Steve is the official keeper of the time, so is there anybody who would like to come forward and address the board in community comments? I guess you don't need the time?
Yeah.
Okay, all right then. Okay, that's a bit of a disappointment. We're going to move then on to item 4.3, the presentation on strengthening Ohio's teacher pipeline, a grant project we've been working on with Wittenberg University. And so, who's going to take that one?
We've got a starting 5.
Excellent, a starting 5. Great, so we'll take this to the court, and we'll see who we can pick up. Great.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to do some introductions, and then we'll go from there. Brian Yonks, who's the chair and associate professor of education at Wittenberg.
Raise your hand. Thank you.
Erica Andrews, who's a senior at Wittenberg, and she also is doing her student teaching at Yellow Springs High School with Desiree Nickel.
Excellent. Excellent.
Then pipeline team members, Mikasa Sims, first grade teacher here, Deborah Mabra, second grade teacher here at Mills Lawn. Chris Seidner, he's also part of the project, but there's parent-teacher conferences this evening at the high school and myself. So I'm gonna let Brian start off and we'll just go from there, and we're ready for the next slide.
Great. Thanks for having me here. Like John said, I chair the education department at Wittenberg University. I've been there 15 years, and Wittenberg has a long relationship with this school district, and a very important one in that there's this kind of symbiotic relationship that we've established over the years of us. Certainly, depending upon the expertise within the district and some of the novel stuff that goes on pedagogically in the classroom with problem-based learning and, some of the things that you've really kind of helped our students understand. So you serve us well as a place to help train or help prepare the next generation of teachers. But at the same point, we've had a number of even your teachers come through our program, and you've hired them as well too. But this particular project started about 2.5 years ago. Got a call from a administrator here in the district and called me up and said, "Brian, what are you doing about preparing teachers of color for the next generation?" I said, "Well, not a whole lot, because we're not doing very well." And the same issue kind of rose to the top here. About diversifying the teaching force within the district, and so these kind of these simultaneous struggles came about because of the relationship between Wittenberg and Yellow Springs. And soon after that conversation that I had, a grant proposal came across my desk that was from the Ohio Department of Education, Ohio Department of Higher Education co-funding, that a school district had to apply to, for some funding to begin to develop some programming to diversify the pipeline. And so it was nothing that I could apply for, as an institution of higher education. This was specifically written for school districts. And as soon as I got that, I called Yellow Springs right away. Yellow Springs is obviously not our largest partner. We're housed in Springfield and things, but because of the commitment to diversifying the pipeline, this was the place that we went. And to make a long story short, the your district has been successful with landing this initial seed money from the Ohio Department of Education, the Ohio Department of Higher Education, and from that we have developed, working together to establish the Wittenberg Yellow Springs University pipeline. And so again, I kind of talked a little bit about our similar institutional goals, but beyond that, beyond kind of this micro aspect, there's a very there's a very clear set of moral and practical purposes in diversifying the pipeline, or diversifying the teaching staff. And it's clear, research indicates that even a child with one teacher of color throughout their elementary school years has a much higher opportunity to achieve well. And to me it's become an epidemic. 82% of our students at Wittenberg are white students, which is actually pretty reflective of the teaching force within the state of Ohio. And when you break that down, even nationwide, that doesn't match our students' demographics. And so there's kind of this disconnect between those that are entering the teaching force and those that are teaching. And one exercise that I like to do in my class, and I actually did it this afternoon. I'm teaching a critical pedagogy class, and I did this afternoon. I asked them, what year did you have your first teacher of color as a teacher? And sometimes I get zeros. Sometimes I get third grade. I had a student today that said my first teacher of color was a college professor. that I had. And when you look at the statistics of how this kind of disconnect between the teaching force and our U.S. population is currently, let alone what it's going to be in 2050, there's, to me, it's an epidemic. It's an absolute epidemic that continues to fester because, they don't see teachers of color in front of them. Therefore, they kind of foreclose that identity. They foreclose the idea that I can be a teacher, or I will be a teacher, I will be an educator, because they haven't seen it. And so I think that one of the things that inspires me is that this is a school district that is putting this as a priority, and it's going to pay dividends to the children of this village. But where this really came from, and I'm gonna have the fortune to introduce Erica now, is really from Erica. I had Erica in one of her very first education classes at Wittenberg, and she was the absolute biggest pain in the butt with pushing the envelope, with asking really hard questions. We spent hours in my office kind of agonizing about her development as a future English teacher, and experiencing lots of experiences in schools where she doesn't see people that look like her necessarily. And here I am as a white male trying to kind of explain that away, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I've never walked in your shoes. And so Erica has been the absolute inspiration for this program. She has provided myself and John and the teachers here in Yellow Springs, this 22-year-old perspective of a person of color that's looking to be a teacher, what they kind of wish they would have known or had the opportunity to get. So I'm going to introduce Erica just real quick to kind of share a little bit about her story as a way more important person than myself in this project.
Thank you for that introduction. Every time he does that, I don't know. So my name is Erica Andrews. I'm an English major and education minor at Wittenberg. I'm involved in a lot on campus. I think one of my biggest roles is being the president of our Concerned Black Students organization. In one of those roles, I have to ask those tough questions to administration. I have to understand why we don't have a diverse population of professors or students. In the first education class I took, we talked a lot about those statistics, and we talked a lot about the lack of teachers of color. And originally, I was a computer science major. My parents are both computer engineers, so they wanted me to try it, and I did, and I failed miserably. I do know how to do a couple things on Python, but it was bad. It was really, really bad.
Python's hard.
Yeah, Python's hard, and it's supposed to be like a
No, it's not.
yeah, it was,
Well, it's supposed to be bad.
So it was a challenge for me, and when I went to college, my parents and I had that conversation, and I really wanted to do teaching, and I wanted to major in English because I'm a really good writer and I love to read, and I love children and I love high schoolers. And so my parents knew me coming in, it was something that I wanted to do, but they just wanted me to expand my horizons. So I did, and it went terribly. So I called my older brother. I have an older brother, and his name is Dion, and he has been categorized in schools as the bad child, right? He was one that was always in detention, he was always getting expelled or suspended. He didn't have motivation to do the work because he didn't have a teacher that put time into him and tried to understand him as a person first, instead of jumping right into the academics. And so I called him and I told him how I failed my class, and I don't know how I'm gonna tell mom and dad. And I told him I really want to be a teacher, like help me figure out how to tell them to be a teacher. Because one thing about my brother, he's always very honest, and he always pushed back on my parents. So I knew he would be able to give me advice, and he told me on the phone in 2016, he said, if I would have had a teacher like you, then I would have went to college. And so that to me was like, I gotta do this then. And so that's when I started my journey and started trying to push for more teachers of color, because again, I'm always the only black body in these classes and the only black woman. And so this project has really opened a lot of doors for me, and I'm in Yellow Springs, and I've never been in a school building with so many Black students, Black teachers, and other minorities. And so taking that all in has been an amazing experience. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead to the next one, Thomas. So the project. So what does it entail? First year sophomore Wittenberg students are considering education as a career paired with a Yellow Springs mentor. So right now we have 3 Wittenberg students who are doing mentorships or internships with Deborah Mabra, Mikasa Sims, and Chris Seidner. They're first year Wittenberg students. And so for about 5 weeks, one will spend 5 weeks with Mikasa, one will spend 5 weeks with Deborah, another will spend 5 weeks with Chris, and they shift. So they get the full range of experience in terms of being in a high school setting, being in a first grade classroom, second grade classroom, and just seeing how they're interacting with students and with teachers. And one of the aha moments for me as an older Black male, here you are, younger Black female, I walked into Mikasa Sims' classroom, and Matt, I didn't tell you this, I walked into Mikasa Sims' classroom, and there were 4 teachers of color in that classroom. There was myself, Mikasa Sims, Mikasa's student teacher, Black female from Wittenberg, and one of our mentor pipeline students. I think the 4 of us looked at each other like, will this ever happen? But to the kids, it was natural. It didn't even faze them. But here we are recognizing the shortage of teachers of color. It was an aha moment for us, but for the kids, it was great. It was great. So when you ask that question, how many teachers of color have you had? And you're like, none.
Sophomore year of college.
Not until sophomore college. Then I look back, and for me growing up in Yellow Springs, I had to count, I had 16 in Yellow Springs. My first and second grade teacher, she was in Jody Pettifer's room, Mrs. Henry. I had 2 Black principals. So, I'm not throwing shade in Yellow Springs. And one of them paddled me in Miss Hoover's room. So that was nice back.
Wait, take that. No battle.
And I never told my parents why I got paddled, and I'm not telling them. So the way the program works, and I got to give a shout out to Tammy, because as the treasurer and to Carrie, they've been great in terms of helping us with the money and whatnot. Terry's been supportive, Matt and Jack. It's just been great just having these bodies in the building. So we got the grant. Kids, I shouldn't say, the students work with our teachers. They interact. They're doing, what are they doing?
They're doing any and everything. They're tutoring, they're going to art class, assisting with all types of needs, and they're just soaking up what it's like to be a teacher, the good, the bad, the ugly. But they're seeing it and they're coming back, so that's what we want, to hook them. And we're doing our job.
And just to make them feel comfortable, all right, being in the setting, and hopefully it'll be enough, all right, that they'll see that they're needed and they're wanted, and we can go from there.
So as part of the incentive, they get a stipend. Okay, they're getting $10 an hour, okay, which is a small stipend. We also provide transportation costs. If they're driving down here, they get reimbursed. That's part of the grant. So there's a little incentive. So for the first and second year, they're getting a couple dollars. If they continue with the program, then of course junior, senior year, they're getting credit for being part of the program. So there is incentive, but the real benefit is for our kids, for all of our kids, for all of our kids. That's the big takeaway. That's the big takeaway. Make the next slide. I know we're running short on time. So heard from Deborah, heard from Casa. Just a couple of nuts and bolts. We had 9 applicants. We selected 4, but then it whittled itself down to 3. We had a kickoff dinner at Wittenberg that was attended by the principals and Terry. We actually started the program January 13th. That was the first week. So we're about 5 weeks in, and it will continue all the way through the 1st of May. Outcomes and lessons learned. Outcomes and lessons learned. So again, that's where Tammy's been a big help. Filling out paperwork such as FBI, BCI background checks. tax forms and whatnot. We were so excited to get this program going. We thought, oh, we might want to do some taxes, we might want to do some background information. Then we assumed that all these kids had a driver's license. We forgot about that part, transportation. And then we forgot, hey, they were full-time students, and we had to navigate the schedules and try to make it match with our teachers. So those are lessons learned in moving forward. Next slide. You wanna-
Yeah, I'll just 2 minutes. I just want to say that, this has been, we've got 3 first-year students down here, and we have a person that's about 9 weeks away from graduation. And, seeing both ends of the spectrum, spending time in your district is an incredible asset that we cannot replicate on our campus. We don't have real live children and families and needs and, these educational needs. And, you've got, I think you've got 6 student teachers down here right now. You've got a phenomenal one at the high school. You've got an art at the high school, and you've got 4 at the elementary school. And, on behalf of the university, we absolutely cannot thank you enough for sharing your talent and, the work that you're doing. And, Matt and I've talked before, it's, the student teaching enterprise is too good of an opportunity not to utilize every hand in that classroom to impact children. And, the days of solo teaching and removing that teacher from the classroom is gone. When Ms. Sims and Ms. Mabra and Ms. Nickel can, work alongside our students, it's really impactful. So, thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Questions?
Yeah, John, I should know the answer to this, but when does the grant expire, and is there a renewal opportunity? Do you know if the state agencies have decided to continue this grant project or not?
So Donna first stopped me yesterday, and she said she did receive some information about the possibility of continuation of the grant for next year. This
Okay.
grant we got is for this year
It's
only.
for this year, right,
But
okay.
the expectation is that we can continue, but
Right.
that's still details to be worked out.
Well, and the state does take its time sometimes, getting those things together. And I guess I just want to say on behalf of the board, we are just thrilled with all of this. This is a conversation, this is a topic that we've been talking about for a long time. This is not an easy nut to crack, as you all well know, but we have wondered what we could do to diversify our faculty, and then this grant opportunity happened, and the opportunity to work with Wittenberg, it was just so exciting for us, and so we're just so pleased to have you here, and we hope that you're having a good time and learning a lot. And I guess I would just finally say, because I remember this conversation way back when, the point that you ended with, John, I'm going to reiterate. You can show us the statistics about the success of black kids when they have black teachers, but this matters to all the kids, every single one of them. And I know that from my own 2 kids. So this is a win for our children. Other questions about any of this, except to say thank you? Yeah, thank you all very much. You are not obligated to stick around for the rest of the day. Yeah, so if you want to just now clear on out, I would be
You got lesson
interested.
planning to do, right?
Yeah, not take it personally.
Definitely lesson plans.
Yeah, lesson plans.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So now we're going to move on to item 4.4 in our agenda, the presentation from our facilities task force, a tireless, maybe now fully exhausted group meeting now for nearly a year. Nearly a year. So I'm going to let you turn it over, Mel, to do this presentation, and we'll hear from others who want to come up to the microphone.
Absolutely. I'm Mel Marsh. Met you a year ago when I asked, what is it you want us to do? And a year later, we have come up with something. Before I get started with what we came up with, I'd like to make sure you understand who the task force members are. So I'm going to ask each one to introduce themselves. And John, you get to introduce yourself.
I'm John Gudgel, minus my starting five.
But you represented Mills Lawn School
Yes,
as
Mills
a
Lawn,
daily
I'm
staff
sorry.
member.
Yes.
Cat Walter, the community.
Chad Runyon. Chris Hamilton, I've got 3 children in the school.
Back in the back.
Susan Miller.
Abigail Cobb. Desiree Nickel.
Yeah, I think you got Desiree.
I'm Mike Richley.
And then we have TJ and Terry, who are also members of the task force. So I know you all attended the public meeting, so I don't want to duplicate what we talked about at the public meeting. But in the report, I did go back to identify what our charge was going forward, talked about our process, and I want to emphasize a couple of things in the process because I think they're really important. That we did do as much as possible in staying in the real world. So we did focus groups with faculty and students in both schools. And we did have 2 different tours of the schools. One time at the beginning to just kind of get the lay of the land, and the second time at the end to say, what have we learned and does it still make sense? And really get to input at that time from both of the principals. We ended up with recommendations that were in some ways fairly simple. We have 3 major recommendations. The first one I want to emphasize is the need for increased maintenance. And that is true no matter what we absolutely end up doing. If you raise everything and start over with brand new schools, you need to maintain them properly going forward. And we all freely admit these buildings have not been maintained properly. If we stick with the old buildings and try to go forward even more so, they're going to need ongoing maintenance of their old entire buildings. So what you have right now with the current permanent improvement levy of $150,000 a year, that's absolutely insufficient for what you're trying to do with these buildings. So no matter what we're saying, you really need to go back and get additional funding for ongoing maintenance and make a much more proactive look at maintenance, thinking ahead, trying to say where are we going to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and what are we going to need to do now. So that's our first big recommendation. The second big recommendation is that we identified some things that we feel you absolutely must address. Find the money however you need to. You absolutely must address these. And they came in a list of recommendations that apply to both schools, and that's found on page 3. So first one for both schools, most important, or not, I can't say most important because they all are important, but we believe that the modular classrooms are just absolutely must be replaced. And going down through the security, the hazardous materials, plumbing, the envelope, one of the things that's critical at this point in time is we're just wasting energy like crazy with that building envelope that leaks. Heating and cooling, cafeteria and serving line, the kitchen, the electric power, and the technology. Those were all in the absolute must-do. You'll see in our medium priority needed improvements, and we really had so few things in the low, we just lumped them all together in the medium. We say if funding permits, and we hope it will, because these were a very hard call to say what should be in the must-do and what should be in the not must-do. But we identified things at both schools that really need to be addressed going forward. And we had things that were recommended by the principals that ended up in the medium priority. We had things that were recommended by the superintendent that ended up in medium priority. This can all change, but from our perspective, we had identified those things that were absolutely essential, and then those things that we wish we could do and hope you could find a way to do it. We have given a number of presentations to the public, and from those public presentations, we have heard nothing that makes us change any of our recommendations. However, we have heard some things that we hope will inform you. Things that say the public doesn't understand the impact of the energy inefficiency. Many in the public don't understand the role of technology in today's education. Many in the public worry about the disconnect between the people who don't have children in the schools and yet needing to fund schools for the future generations. So there's a list of things in there. I also wanted to highlight a couple of things that we have from task force members since that time. And one thing that was really emphasized by what John and his pipeline project are doing is the unique experience people have from the Yellow Springs School District. The students here get something that they don't necessarily get anywhere else. And there has been a fear and some mention in the survey that we did where people said, why don't you just consolidate with some other school district? And what you heard tonight really illustrates why that would be a disaster, an absolute and total disaster. So as we go forward, We really, really hope that you will do everything possible to mend fences with the community, to educate the community about what's needed and why it's needed, and to try to help the community understand the unique educational opportunity that we have in the Yellow Springs School District that would be lost if we didn't continue the school district. Now, I invited task force members they gave commentary that was included in the report, but I'd also like to invite task members who would like to speak to you with personal perspectives that go along with the food census perspectives that we provided. Chris, I know you had something?
I'm not sure which way I'm supposed to face off. Thank you guys. So I want to thank the board, both superintendents and the rest of the task force for letting me participate in this effort. When Mario asked me back in February or March last year to join the task force, I was pleasantly surprised. He and I had many conversations about the levy, some heated, some calmer. And so I was really surprised that he brought me into the group because he was looking for a variety of opinions, right? That was one of the things that he was focused in on. And I think as a task force, we worked together to achieve a product and a process that will help the board move forward and help the community move forward with the facilities. I believe the task force has provided the board an objective list of requirements for making our schools better. We recommend a focus on a coherent maintenance plan with appropriate and adequate funding is a key first step. That'll not only quickly improve the state of our current facilities, but will help the board and district gain the confidence of the public that the district can properly manage the facilities, new or renovated, in a proactive manner. We also thought, based on the information that we had seen over the past 10 months, and we didn't see everything, that a modern renovation of both campuses was an appropriate solution to meet the guiding principles that we had agreed upon. Clearly, cost must be figured into the way forward. However, based on what we had given access to, renovation seemed to be a more tolerable solution for the community. Personally, I'm still on the fence about new versus renovation. Having brand new schools for my kids to go to would be awesome. Some of my kids may be graduated before those schools are built, but I did see recently in communication between the task force members that there's several members that are making recommendations that we go with a brand new K through 12 building at the high school location. This concerns me greatly as none of this new course of action was mentioned until recently, and it's been recently publicized as a potential solution by the superintendent. It was also an option that got significant negative feedback during the 2018 facilities effort. I don't believe that the board nor the superintendent has made an adequate argument for that solution, and it may be antithetical without hard evidence to the results of the survey, the 2018 levy efforts results, and the results of this task force. But clearly it's not the current charter of this task force to provide the solution, as we said in the report. But I ask that the board carefully consider that it will have an uphill battle with the community to propose a radically different solution to what the task force recommended. It may end up being the most cost-effective and appropriate solution, but you will clearly have to lay out a business case for a new K through 12 school that will persuade the community. As a parent of children in all three schools, I really like the two campuses. The proximity of Mills Lawn to the town, to the library, to the Glen are wonderful additions to the education, to the elementary education. And having a high school separate with lots of land available for sports and future additions, as well as adequate parking, because there's a lot of kids who are driving, seems to have value as well. Bottom line is I want my children, along with other current and future Yellow Springs students, to have school facilities that encourage and enhance learning, that provide a safe and healthy environment, and provide modern and relevant tools and technologies for them to learn to use. I hope the school board provides a future facilities plan that not only provides that, but is sensitive to the community values that I feel the task force captured well. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, board members, for your service to the community. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I don't think this is an easy job, and I don't know the treasurer. I don't think they get paid a whole lot.
Wait, what?
Unless I missed it, so thanks for taking the lumps for everybody else. Last week when we were here in the meeting room, I didn't think I was going to have much to say. I still don't have a whole lot, so you don't have to start checking your phone or anything. But so I'll make it brief. I think Mel, by the way, you did a great job being a moderator. And we do have some things to pass on. Most of what I'm about to say, especially the first part on maintenance, she's already said, but I had it written, so I got to read it, I suppose. I think we have created a pretty good list of things that should be addressed in our facilities. One overarching issue is maintenance. Regardless of what the board decides as far as addressing the structural needs, we all agree that maintenance has been inadequate. Our entire approach to maintenance should be looked at. I was disappointed as a villager to see relatively low dollar issues not addressed over the summer between our 2 tours of the high school. Windows, floors, paint, exterior siding, locker room benches, to name just a few. One way to address maintenance might be to increase the school income tax, which is an approach that I mentioned as one option during our task force meetings over the summer. As far as addressing the needs list, this is going to be something that will be looked at closely, as you well know. I suggest, as has been mentioned by others, and was something I mentioned during the Pulse meetings, to come up with a menu of options, several options, with total, life cycle, projected costs, life expectancy, and pros and cons. What do we get, how long will it last, and how much will it cost overall, maintenance, build, and personnel? These cost estimates need to be defendable. It will not be sufficient to declare them as fact without a sound basis. Estimates based on replacement of whole systems, such as functioning, which are functioning without problems, will be questioned, I believe, by the community. So consider non-standard approaches. Don't dismiss them out of hand, such as mini splits for addressing needs in certain areas for air conditioning, as an example. I am encouraged that we're looking at this holistically with all the buildings in the mix, because I agree with Terry when she says we have one shot to get this right. Surveys show that cost affordability /affordability is a top concern of the community. Getting defendable cost estimates and picking one of the most cost effective would be my recommendation. The last thing, I feel like we're at an opportunity here in Yellow Springs. I strongly encourage the board to work in conjunction with the village and other stakeholders as comprehensive land use is currently being considered. I am personally concerned with the direction of our current policies and politics in our nation, and I would hope Yellow Springs, of all places, can come together and hear each other and make a place for this village's, plan for this village's land use. The school's location and land plan is obviously a crucial part of the overall village picture, land use picture. From my point of view, if the numbers show that a K-12 structure, and I didn't say new or otherwise, but a structure makes sense, then location becomes the next question. I personally believe consolidating around this area in Mills Lawn would be the best for environmental and village design reasons. It clearly would create a more workable village and provide, walkable, walkable village, and provide easy access to a public building that would become the center of many community activities. As a high school teacher, we hear a lot about the elementary, but I would personally love to be able to take my class on a short walk to get to the Glen. The sale of land out of the high school, including the land that schools currently sit upon, might lend itself well to partially funding the project and also dovetail well with the village's desire for more housing. I'm not pushing for this option unless it makes sense fiscally, but I wanted to voice my preference concerning location. I hope this community can work together to get something planned, and I remind myself that everyone involved in this process has good intentions and is working towards improving the school's facilities. Standing by for questions or a talk over a beer, and good luck to everybody.
He will pay too, that's no, that is.
I don't really have anything to add to what you two have already said. You've covered a lot of territory, except that this process has been, up until very recently, one I thought that was very based on consensus, and it's been an enormous learning experience. And in the last couple weeks, more diversity in this task force has come out, and I think is also representative of the community in certain ways, even though our task force is not as diverse as the community really is. It was a good start. So I guess in preparation for whatever plan you choose. And I think you're getting a lot of good guidance. And as I've been learning throughout this, it's a very complex process, a very complex decision that we did not and do not have the capacity to fully understand what's involved with it. So with that said, whatever you decide on and take to the public, please take the biggest considerations that we've been reiterating and repeating along with you, and I know you know this. So thank you for the experience, and I look forward to seeing where the process goes. Wait, come on.
Okay, so I'm the jokey joke guy. So I'm the guy that's probably experienced all the schools in Yellow Springs except for the one on Dayton Street because that was built in 1969.
You just missed that one.
But the one thing I would ask you to consider as we move forward, one of the biggest components of any renovation, new construction are the teachers. And Terry and I and Matt and Jack, one of the things I think we missed out on greatly the last time was getting input from our teachers for whatever reason. And I think it's important for us to motivate and to give the teachers the incentive to be an integral part of this process. And I state that from the feelings from a couple of years ago where the teachers didn't feel listened to. And maybe I missed that, but I don't think I did. So let's make sure that whatever we do, that the teachers are an integral part because they're the ones in the front lines. They're the ones in the trenches. And they're the ones who really have firsthand knowledge of some of the things we need to look at, whether it's maintenance, renovation, and everything. Thank you.
I don't, is somebody's alarm going on?
It's ignore it.
Oh.
I think it's-
Okay.
They're at the other end of
Somebody
the
breaking in and screaming copyright. Okay, that's fine.
I'm Susan Miller, and this has been an exciting group to work with for the past year. And so I've really enjoyed it. But during the time together as a task force, I think the one thing we've confirmed is the vitality of this village is based a lot on our school, our independent school system. And I personally have concluded that the most efficient and effective way to do this is to combine our K through 12 in one location, and I think the Eden Road location is ideal. To be able to consolidate the lunchrooms, the school, the music rooms, the utilities under one facility just seems so much more wise financially. And I think I'm most fearful that in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to be doing this all over again. And going to be saying these aging facilities need more money, and I'm not sure that that'll happen. So what concerns me the most is we're going to have to, what I'm calling, outsource our kids to another school district, which I think will just be devastating for our village. Now, having said that, I think this list of improvements that we went through, or list of priorities that we went through, is wonderful. I think we've done a great job. And if you all, as a school board, feels that's the way we have to go, then I'm going to support 100% what your decision is. That's just my own personal feeling as to how best to proceed.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm Abigail Cobb, and these are my conclusions. I have found there has been real value in talking about this with other people, even though, and maybe especially when our views differ. And although this is officially the end of the task force, I hope that these conversations continue in some kind of structured way throughout the village and throughout the coming year or more until we have another plan and another levy. When I am talking to other people in the community, I try to represent the view that these are our schools and they benefit all of us and our village, not just some people's children. Someone, I think it was Lori Kuhn, also on our task force, who said that a fact sheet would be really helpful. I agree with that. And the three things especially I would like to see on such a fact sheet that could be put forward by the board would be about the energy inefficiency of our buildings, the fact that Mills Lawn has some single pane windows, the fact that somewhere along the line, I heard that the district spends about $20,000 a month on heating and cooling bills. I'd also like to have on the fact sheet the percentage of the district's budget that is spent on personnel. I think I've heard that it's greater than 80% or more of the budget is spent to supporting our teachers and staff members. This is really important for people in the community to know, especially when we're talking about the possibility that not enough has been invested with maintenance. I think it's important for people in our community to know that personnel, teachers and staff have been the #1 priority. And the last thing I'd like to see for sure on that fact sheet has to do with open enrollment. The ways that open enrollment students benefit our district and the ties that I learned from John Gudgel, up to 1/3 of our open enrollment students have family and close ties to the village already. Most people that I'm hearing seem to want to fix up the buildings that we have now and pay for that over time. And I sympathize with what might be the ease of this approach, but my conclusion is this may not be the wisest use of our money in the longer term. Although I didn't initially favor a K-12 building on one campus, I now see so many advantages. I do think this will be a big turnaround for the village to reach that same conclusion. Not only cost advantages, but advantages of multiple programs, as Susan has said. So those conversations will need to continue, and I think the school board and superintendent will need to provide careful, factual information about the costs and benefits of any proposals going forward.
Thank you, Abby.
Hello. So when Mario first called and asked me to serve on the facilities committee, he indicated it would be just once a month. You know, meeting.
Couple months, we'll be done.
Right, a few months,
Yeah.
and you'll be done. We want a teacher's perspective. So I said, sure. And then not only was it more than once a month, you know, maybe once every 2 weeks, but lots of school visits and community meetings and talking to different groups of people. So it was a very thorough, comprehensive process. And I learned a lot, and all of my colleagues on the facilities committee learned a lot. We spent considerable time talking to teachers and to students and to community members, and I feel like we really did our homework and came up with some excellent suggestions, recognizing that the community, at least at the time of the last levy, did not feel that it was an affordable option, although we had a perfect storm of competing interests at the time, so maybe it wouldn't be so horrible in the future, you know, we wouldn't have competing levies and things like that. But representing the teachers, I think the teachers are very grateful to the facilities committee and that they had a voice through me and John Gudgel speaking with the committee and taking them through the schools. I do want to say that at our last meeting with teachers, they indicated that they thought the process was much more thorough this time and that they were able to have more of an input. They still would like to have more input. And also it was pointed out that students would like to have more of an input in the discussions about where our schools go. There's a lot of mixed feelings in terms of the K-12 building and where it should be. I mean, I know a lot of people, myself included, consider the Mills Lawn area a sacred space. And the idea of like turning it into housing or something is not exciting to me. So if there is a K-12, I prefer it up at the Enon end of town. But I do want to say one final thing, and this is something Jack brought up. Jack Haddard, our principal, at the last staff meeting where we talked about facilities. He said that something that's hard to calculate is the pride that students and staff have in a building, and I agreed that that was true. And at the same time, I had recently read an empirical study, spending a lot of time with empirical studies these days, working on the literacy grant. And this study is from the Center for Evaluation and Education Policy Analysis, and it's called The Importance of School Facilities in Improving Student Outcomes. And the point is made, and maybe I'll just read the concluding paragraph. A large body of research, we're talking empirical research over the past century, has consistently found that school facilities impact teaching and learning in profound ways. Yet state and local policymakers often overlook the impact facilities can play in improving outcomes for both teachers and students. While improving facilities comes at a financial cost, the benefits of such investments often surpass the initial fiscal costs. Policymakers thus should focus greater attention on the impacts of facilities and adopt a long-term cost-benefit perspective on efforts to improve school facilities. So I feel like we are very much interested right now in improving student outcomes. We would like to improve teacher retention, particularly of highly qualified teachers that we have in our schools, and also to attract new teachers like Erica, who is my student teacher right now. I'm very lucky to have her.
There's no lobbying.
No lobbying. I think that the facilities plays a very large role in that. It's just the way you feel in a building. And you can airlift and drop teachers by parachute into war zones, and we will make it work in our classroom, but we shouldn't have to do that, and the schools are an integral part of our community, an integral part of the village identity and who we are. And we do serve students that would not be served well in other districts. I'm also the advisor for the GSA group at our school, and I couldn't see that being as successful in other school districts. So there's a lot of value in the Yellow Springs school systems, and I hope that we put our money where our mouth is in terms of taking care of our schools. Thanks.
Will you just say what GSA is, just for the bigger
What it
audience?
is, the Gay Straight Student Alliance.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're right, I can't see that in Springfield.
No.
Jerry, would you like to add anything? Okay, TJ?
Yeah, I'd just like to add just a thanks, I think I've said before when we were in a group at public setting, I appreciate all the time. I know that the initial call from Mario was a few months, and we said, and that has expanded and expanded and expanded, and I know that we even scaled down the scope so that we could really try to hash out the problems. But having been involved in the levy last time and being approached by people that I respect highly in the community who said I didn't understand the problems, I still don't understand the problems. I think the very first step is getting these problems identified so we can see what the issues are in the schools, and then the next step is finding a solution. And obviously that's probably an even longer process, but it took us this long to get here, and I think that's a great first step to kind of highlight what we're up against, what we're doing. So I really appreciate it.
I will echo that. And I've told the task force before, you spent probably more time than I would have in these. So thank you for that.
I want to echo the thanks as well, because Mario lied. And hi, Mario. I also just wanted to about how much time this was going to take and how involved it was going to get, and thinking about all of the balls in the air and the moving parts and whatnot. I just wanted also, I think mostly for folks maybe watching this, to just clarify some of the logistics here, which is to say that in order for the board to do anything, we have to vote on a recommendation that comes from the superintendent. Once we vote on that, then I think regardless of whatever outcome we come to, it's going to involve a public vote. And because the sums of money here are such that we are either going to have to go out for a permanent improvement levy, an income tax, a bond levy, millage rate, whatever it happens to be, we can't do what's on this list with the money that we have in our budget. So ultimately, logistically speaking, this is a village decision. We in a sense will take a recommendation from Terry, which is a recommendation to the rest of the village to vote yay or nay.
And just so I can be very public about this, there is no recommendation.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no plan.
But
I think this is a critical first step. So I just don't want anybody to, I want to dispel the false narrative that I think is out there, that there is a plan and that things are moving full speed ahead on this plan. There isn't.
Right.
I don't think we're anywhere near that point. However, having said that, I've also said publicly, you can't play around with this too long. Because in the end, this is about children. It's really not about us. It's about children, and our children don't have really the time to wait that we might have. So there will be much more public engagement of staff, engagement of students. I've already talked to teachers and principals about that. But there is no plan. This is the critical first step. And as these folks know, it took a long time to get here because the issues are not simple, nor are the solutions.
And they're not easy.
That's right. That's right. And I think since in the last 2 years, we've accumulated a lot more information. First and foremost, the materials that you've provided for us, which we will take some time to digest. We have an additional study of the building. We have a land use assessment that we didn't have 2 years ago. We've been accumulating more things to kind of throw into the pot to see which is the best, rightest, most palatable solution to this problem. And that's now, we will enter the next phase to try to sort out what are the options here, what are the pros and cons, what are the heavy lifts, and what are maybe the low-hanging fruit.
Well, we on the task force want to say thank you for allowing us to work on this. And also, I personally want to tell you, you now have ambassadors. And they are knowledgeable ambassadors. So please take advantage of these ambassadors as you move forward. Thank you very much.
Splendid. Thank you. Sylvia, do you have something you want to ask?
I mean, okay, I guess my first question would be the comments from, I know we had a lot of attachments and things that you provided. The comments that everybody provided tonight, do we have those saved?
Have you submitted them?
I didn't meet my morning deadline.
I'm sure you're not
With
alone.
the 2 hour delay I hadn't done that.
Or is it possible to have them? That would be really, I would appreciate that, because I'm like trying to scribble like phrases, and then I realized, well, maybe it would be nice
Or
to
you just watch the video.
Well, I'm not likely to do that, because I might see myself and be startled. But, I would appreciate it if we had that sort of in the mix of everything, as much as possible from
Yeah, that's great.
people who spoke.
And Terry and TJ both have all of the notes that we have submitted from all of the public meetings.
Okay.
So,
And then,
Wait, you were
Go
gonna,
ahead, sure.
Stephanie, you wanted to
Sure.
interject?
The notes from the small group meetings are all on the website.
Great.
okay. And then just, I guess as a question, trying to, and I've been thinking about this since the, I don't know what we named it, but the meeting that was at Mills Lawn, when you were providing the public with, okay, the public meeting, and then reading some of the materials and getting ready for tonight, and kind of trying to tune in to what was being put forth as the sort of overarching themes or values. And I was thinking back, and so I kind of wanted to invite anyone to comment or provide their thoughts if they wanted to. One thing I was puzzling over is if cost or finances and or maintaining facilities that a community already has are sort of paramount concerns or values. Would anyone like to comment on how that aligns with Yellow Springs as a community's overwhelming passage of the levy for the Greene County community and the Greene County Career Center's completely new facility? I would love to hear how that, I'm puzzling over that, and I would love input from the group that arrived at cost and maintaining original facilities is the most important thing. And then we, to a tune of almost 70%, supported that levy.
we arrived at the importance of cost based on the survey that we had done with 150 plus responses. And the vast majority of them said, we turned it down because it was too costly. Sometimes they said it was too costly, just that. Others said it was too costly for one school when we knew we would get another bill for the Central School. So that's where we came up with cost as a very critical component of this.
Does anyone here who's a Yellow Spring voter want to say anything about that, since we voted for that?
So the background there, to maybe clarify it, I think is that levy came up I don't know, maybe a year or 6 months after our big levy, right? And it was half the millage rate, so it's essentially half of the levy value that our levy was.
Because it's spread over more
passed those
districts,
strings.
yeah.
Almost by the same ratio that our levy
Yeah.
was defeated, so it is an interesting. So I take away from that the village is clearly passionate about education and supports it. It's just, you know, it's an
And
interesting.
supports new buildings and committing like a whatever millage that was.
And you're
Or
including the income
something
tax.
else.
Well, the income tax, that didn't have the income tax piece, so it's
It
not
was
quite a
just-
half,
yeah.
but it's half on the millage rate for the
Yeah,
property
the
tax.
millage was.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that came out again in the public meetings and it came out in the survey is there is some fence mending that needs to be done. There's a lack of trust at the school board. And so, again, using the ambassadors to help carry your message out and help people understand where you're coming from and why this is important, I think is really going to help. I was taken by one of the comments that came out most recently when somebody said, it feels like you're using selling the land as a threat to us. And every time I've heard Terry talk about why you might possibly consider selling land, it's been absolutely crystal clear. Your words, Terry, if I can paraphrase you properly, you say we have a moral and a legal obligation to have good facilities for our students. And if the public is not willing to fund them, we have to fund them any way we possibly can. Is that accurate?
Well, and I would add to that, it's
Yes.
also, it's not any kind of indication of the lack of, I mean, people use different terminology, imparting sort of sacredness to some of the school land that is publicly valued. And I don't think anyone on the board disagrees with that. But the bottom line is, it's not the board's job or duty or responsibility to provide lovely, sacred public land. And if someone else wants to keep it lovely, sacred, and public, while we need to use it to do what we need to do for students, then by all means get together and buy it and keep it that way.
Absolutely.
And it's, because it doesn't mean we don't all value it, but that's not really appropriate as a school.
Again, it's not, nobody's
Yeah.
making a threat, that's my point.
Right, it's not, it's unfortunate
Perception.
that it's seen that way.
And that's
So
my
part of our
concern.
work is to try to, for me, it's education, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I think it's natural that if you're not involved in schools, or, you know, there are a lot of things that you may not know. We only have a limited number of ways we can raise money. So the funding meeting is a plug for that, Monday, February 24th. Hopefully we'll be able to go over some things, some just basic things about how schools are funded in Ohio. I read a comment from one of the meetings and it made me think it was around, you know, doesn't anybody realize in Yellow Springs we just, you know, we pay all these taxes to fund our public schools, and I'm thinking, you and the 609 other districts in Ohio,
Yeah.
that's how Ohio,
Funds its public
unfortunately
schools.
for all of us, funds its schools.
And they
So-
still do it in a way that is unconstitutional.
Yeah,
Correct.
So anyway,
Yeah, and can I just address one other thing, because I forget which one of you brought it up. I think the village is engaged in its comprehensive land use plan, and the schools are a part of that conversation. So when we've heard that there needs to be greater coordination among the various stakeholders in town, I think we're on a much, I think that collaboration, those conversations are happening on a much more regular basis than they were 3 and 4 years ago, which I think is all terrific. You know, I think the way I would think about this, because we've said this a number of times publicly, we're a district of about, let's call it 750 students, which owns roughly 42 to 44 acres of land. We need to right-size ourselves, because that's way out of proportion to what we need. And it is an expense for us, you know, we have to rake the leaves and mow the grass. So it's, so we do want to think about what's the most responsible way to handle our assets in a way that benefits the schools and the rest of the village. And those are some of the conversations that we're having as the village's plan is being worked on as well.
thank you again very much.
Well, thank you all, yes. Yeah, and we may, you know, we'll be back So that's the threat. So yeah, as we look through all this material.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Yes, and you are all also not obligated now to be here for the rest of the festivities. We'll give you a moment to clear on out.
Susan, you beat me.
I also moderated myself. I did. But no, I definitely saw it and
You work for the hopefully we'll see now. Busing system was not on the agenda.
yeah, I'll try to, maybe I'll try to catch some of them. But like it, yeah.
Oh, well.
Actually, would be.
The what? Oh, the United Society?
Well, why don't you just sort of move one
Let me
chair
go
down?
ahead and get that
You
first,
take
I'll
one.
grab it.
Oh, you don't want to be this? You want, okay.
You want me to put it down?
Okay, something, okay.
Is
We have to
this-
elevate him in the leg. We have to take care of the infirm.
Gimpy, I'm called at home right now.
It is the way.
Yeah.
And there's a chair behind.
Okay? All right.
Actually, yeah, it's been like working the kneecap. Yeah, that's great. You guys are
No, God, no. You should bring a stool.
You guys are good?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's cold out there.
Well, now I feel lonely.
Okay, I've got one at work, so I've used them up.
Everybody left. Yeah, exactly. All right, people.
Moving on.
We're moving on to the administrative reports, 4.5 on our agenda. And I should say that our high school principal is knee-deep in parent-teacher conferences this evening. So, Mr. Matt, the floor is yours.
Mr. Matt.
Matt. So, first of all, I just want to also acknowledge that it's been a really, it's been a tough week. What I want to say is that the response from staff and students around supporting each other and really showing up for each other around this tragedy with Mr. Darrell was really, I was proud of that. I took it to heart that our kids were really looking out for each other, and our staff really helped to make it the best day it could be. Students were giving each other notes, hugging each other, just really empathetic. Just want to say that I was proud of how we were able to come together as a community around this. It's Black History Month, and at Mills Lawn, this is one of the best months and the most special months that we have as a school community, because we really take it seriously. We've got a committee that works to plan tons of events. We've been very thoughtful about it. Ever since I've been here, it's always been something that we've really focused on, but over the past few years, we've really upped our game. We now are choosing specific time periods. So last year we did the Harlem Renaissance, this year we're doing the Civil Rights era, so that we can just make it more impactful for kids. So instead of like the whole hundreds of years of history, we can think about a specific time period and really learn about folks that were important during that time period, and we really that kids should know about. So I've got a picture of Malcolm X up there because Malcolm X is one of my personal heroes. I love Malcolm X. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was in high school, and that set me on a journey to learn a lot more. But we in the morning we're featuring a different figure every day, and every classroom signs up for it. So from kindergarten through 6th grade, every classroom is going on the news one day this month and featuring a hero or somebody that's important. We have this Let the Children March book that every classroom, we purchased it for every classroom, and they're doing age-appropriate language arts activities around it. We're doing our Wheeling Gaunt coin drive, and if you walk around the building, you'll see we have these 4-foot images of Wheeling Gaunt, and Kate Kerrigan Aunt Kate, and she's known around the village and the school. She printed them out, and wheeling is like dropping change into our change jars. So it's like, it's really cool. So we're doing that so we can help with the statue project and really motivate our kids to be, to show that they have a voice and they have power. The committee members are there: John Gudgel, Deborah Mabra, Mikasa Sims, Gina Turner-Smith, Jody Pedford, Joe Frading-Reichert, Olivia Dishman, and Ian Meekin. They are the committee team that works really hard to bring this together, and I'm very proud of it. So it's a great month for us for sure. Other things, we finished data sessions today. Actually, with the snow day that we had last week, kind of pushed us back a bit, but it's not as maybe cool or interesting sometimes, but the data is what drives our instruction, and it's critical for us to know how our students are doing. Are they making progress? Are interventions working? Do we have enrichment in place for kids that are really achieving at high levels? So those are really important conversations, and it's been very productive. And then the last thing is just I'm proud of this as well. We finally have figured out how to compost here at Mills Lawn. And it's like, we got the potential to just expand it to the whole building. We're still kind of thinking about how we scale it up. But currently our 3rd and 4th graders are composting every day. Our kitchen, they're composting everything, all the food waste. And we have a great partnership with Matthew Larson and Alexander Klug, and they are connected with Agraria as well as some other local kind of green initiative groups. And shout out to Elise Bongiorno and Violet Madison. John, I think, was saying, or somebody was saying, no, it was Brian Yachts was saying that Erica was, a pain in the butt. These students have pushed me and kept saying, what are we doing? We're going to do composting. And they kept it going so that we actually were able to launch something this year. So pretty exciting. I learned that we can compost just about everything that's on our school tray except for bones. And we really don't have bones at school very often.
So where are you composting?
It's taken to Matthew Larson's got he's got a company, and he takes it away from the school and they compost it. And we want to do it locally too. We want to have our own composting piles. So we're going to try to build that as well as we get into the warmer weather. So.
And where is this going to be located?
Right, there's a space right under your window. That's what I'm thinking. It's rectangular shape.
We have amazing flowers. There's some perennials planted for you.
That's right.
Smell 10 months of the
When you
year.
have to burn off some stress, you just come over and you just turn
Turn the soil a little bit,
Yeah.
With the
flower boxes.
all this land, we can have a garden out there.
Unless you've got animal products in it, then
That's-
sometimes it does. But if
Yeah.
it's just vegetables, it shouldn't smell. It shouldn't smell.
So.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's terrific. This is a group of kids I've noticed that have taken a particular interest
No, we have not.
in their footprint in the cafeteria. And, like the recycling thing that they were talking about, plastics last year, composting this year. I think this is really great.
We are probably, I would guess we're one of the only elementary schools that really has gotten to this level, and we still got some room to grow. So perfect. Feeling good about it.
Love it.
Thank you.
So any pressure on Heather's?
We're all talking about it. So
You see some friendly rambling going on.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, our treasurer's report. I don't think we have any recommendations. We don't have to vote on anything this time around, do we?
Not yet.
Yeah. Right.
So, you have in your board docs in front of you, you have December, the financial report as of December 2019. And then you also have the financial report as of January 31st, 2020, and I'm going to go over the January financial report. So on the first page, we have the cash flow, and once again, I did not update the projected for January, so I will get you a corrected page for that. But then on the next page, we have what happened during the month of January. And with the property tax, I anticipated that we would get more advances than we did, so we have a timing issue there. And then also for the month of January, just that month, for the general fund,
we were $64,000 under budget. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
And then on page 4 is basically where I'm comparing the 7 months for the fiscal year for the general fund, comparing the budget to the actual. So what you'll see, once again, is you'll see the timing difference on the revenue. But if you take that out, we're about $6,500 actual to budget. So we're running very close. And the thing is and I've communicated with the board at length about the income tax and the how do I want to say it, the declining revenue this year for the income tax, but then offsetting that is the open enrollment, and that's up this year. So basically, those two items right now are balancing each other out.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment, Tammy? When you sent us that, or maybe you just sent me, I can't remember, about the continuing decline in the income tax collection, I forwarded that to Josue, just to say, FYI, this is what we're looking at. He then went back and discovered a similar downward trend in the village's collection as well. So this does seem to be a bigger problem than just the way we collect our income taxes.
Okay.
And so I know folks over in the village now are attuned to this, and so, yeah.
Well, it makes more sense if ours is declining than theirs is declining.
Yeah, I think they sort of thought it was going up, and then they looked again and realized it wasn't quite. So, sorry.
Okay. No, that's all right. But for us, we have the open enrollment.
Yep.
To offset that. And then if you look at the expenditures, we're $197,000 under budget on the expenditures for the year. So, I mean, if you're looking at, the revenues less the expenditures, we've only spent $93,000 more than what we've taken in. So 7 months into this year, we're looking pretty decent. And hopefully, I'll continue to monitor it for the remaining months. But, I'm being cautiously optimistic at this point in time. And then page 5, we also have the actual as compared to the entire year budget. And the next 2 pages, we have where does the money come from, and then also where does the money go. And then the 2 pages after that, we have the graphs that just explain the financial statements in a different format. We have the reconciliation. So for all funds, we have a little over $5.4 million in the bank. And then the remaining pages are the details of each fund. And we have about, 5 or 6 pages of funds. So that's my report for January.
That's FUNDS, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, so just looking at this chart remind me of what Abby was saying about, the public needs to know how we support teachers and stuff, and we need charts. I just want to let people know that those charts are frequently available and out in the public. And I have a feeling it's just people don't know where to look, or they don't know who to ask where to look and stuff, but all of that information is out there. So.
Right, and now that we have Word docs, it's going to be available. If anyone in the public goes to our Word docs, then they can pull up the financial report and look at that.
And there may be a way, as we look at our website and changes, there may be a way to also put it in another place that's more easily accessible, so that we can continue our quest to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, of course, I think frequently we feel very transparent, but we know where we're getting the information and stuff, and so it's a wonderful reminder about the importance of making sure that everybody else also knows, or at least knows how to access it. So, yeah.
Other questions? Okay, well then let's move on to item 6, the adoption of our financial portion of our consent calendar, which I believe is items 6.1 through 6.3. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussions about any of this? Explanations that you want to, things we need to know about?
Yes, I just want to point out that we have the appropriation changes for December and then also for January. And then we have a certificate of availability. And what that is that if an item is ordered or purchased or it happens before the purchase order date for the amount from up to $3,000, I'm able to certify that. And when I certify that, what that means is the funds were available then and they're available now. For anything over $3,000, I have to bring that to the board for approval. So with this situation, this is for the architects. I did not realize that they were going to be billing for the additional meetings. We had paid them before, so we didn't have a purchase order for them, so we needed to prepare that.
And, sorry, clarification, this is attached to the Facilities Task Force's meetings. Mike Richley, architect, was a resource person at those meetings.
Yes. And then 6.3 is an agreement with school insurance consultants. And I first used them a while ago when I was at North Valley Hill down in Cincinnati. So that's been several districts ago when I first used them. But what they do is they come in and they will help us bid out our property and our fleet insurance. They'll go over the coverages, over the limits, and then also look at the prices. And normally they can save us quite a bit of money in that first year. And then we sign up with them, and then we continue to pay them $3,500 per year. And then they're also a resource for us. So not that we're unhappy with our insurance agent or anything, but it's just a good idea to periodically go out to bid and just look at what you have and see if you can save some money.
Great. Questions about any of those items? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Ellison?
Yes.
McQueen?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Khan?
Yes.
Mayor Hemmick?
Yes.
Good. We'll move on to our superintendent's reports and recommendations.
Okay, board, so for updates, there are really just two. And the first is a reminder, as I mentioned earlier when the task force was here, we have our school funding meeting on Monday, February 24th, 6:30 here at Mills Lawn.
Can you do that in 18-point type, Carol? In the article, we really want people to come to this.
Yes. And then the second update, we're required twice a year to present publicly our bullying report. So you see that in your documents, just a few entries from the fall. So at the high school level, no reports from Mills Lawn.
Or McKinney,
Or McKinney. That
which
is
I think may
indeed
be
correct.
a record. So that's great. It's wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to approve several things tonight. First of all, we have a first read for one policy. Can I skip ahead?
Well, I was going to say, why don't we do the motion and then you can explain those.
Thank you.
Because where is the?
It's
yeah, that's 8.1. So let's
okay.
go. We have the consent calendar administrative portion 8.1 through 8.4.
So 8.5.
Well, I think that 8.5 is just the vote.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, so motion?
Yeah, so.
Second from Sylvia, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, so jump in.
You're just on a roll.
Tonight, we have first read for one policy, 1310, employment of the treasurer. And it reflects a slight change in hiring and changes in insurance options through House Bill 291. As presented there. Second, that is not actually on my update, but is in board docs. I am asking you to approve a memorandum of understanding with our classified union, OOC. And this regards a change to an MOU about a provision in the contract regarding sick bank. So there are actually two conflicting pieces. And so one says that members can contribute sick days to to another member. The other piece below it says, this goes to the sick bank.
Oh, so direct
They're kind of
versus put it in a bank.
direct
Okay.
versus bank.
Okay.
So a member has requested to donate directly, and so we agreed on an MOU until we can resolve this.
Clean up that language.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's what that is.
Okay.
I want you to approve a donation from Deborah Mabra, who was with us earlier, organized a Zen-Con here at Mills Lawn and raised, I believe, $408,000 for.
Wow.
We're on our way, aren't we?
You couldn't believe those Zulu people. I mean, they were just crazy.
Mic drop, we're out here.
I'm in the wrong business.
Dial back some zeros. It was $408.
Which is still,
does make a difference.
wonderful, which is still awesome.
Which is
So
correct.
we greatly appreciate the donations of all types, 408 or 408,000.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Not turn you down.
Either way.
I like how you did that there.
And then, finally, I ask that you approve our annual membership into the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Yep, which we do every year.
Thank you.
Good. Questions? Call the roll.
McQueen,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Con,
Yes.
Mayor Emmett,
Yes.
Ellison.
Yes.
Okay, now we go into the personnel part of the consent calendar, and I think this is 9.1 and 9.2. Yeah, I think that's correct.
So
Do we have to
moved.
do anything
Oh.
about this 8.5?
8 point,
It's the
Which
vote.
is suggested?
8.5 is the vote.
8.5
Is the
is the
vote.
vote.
Oh, that's the
That's one of the ways
Yes.
this one
this
looks
is a-
funny
oh,
compared to the
yes.
other one.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's not really a separate item,
so you
it's
see
just
there's a
voting on the
9.3
item.
that does the same
But it
thing.
gets numbered, which is
Or does.
confusing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, so motion for
Also
9,
moved.
so moved.
Second.
Second over here for 9.1 and 9.2. What do we need to know?
First, we only have 2 personnel schedules this month, additional support staff for some movement that was still connected to January. And you know, we've changed our procedure so that I don't bring anything to you unless we have checked every box about employment, including background checks, and sometimes that's the lag. So that's support staff and extra duties, some coaches. So I ask for your approval of those 2 schedules. And then board, I ask that you approve the settlement agreement and release as noted.
Questions about either of those 2 items? Call the roll then, please.
So I need to either pull out, I need to pull out.
Probably need to do these separately.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So I'm sorry, quite right. So let's do this over again. I need a motion for 9.1.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay?
Who seconded?
I need a, so call the roll on that.
Turner,
Yes.
Con,
Yes.
Mayor Emmett,
Yes.
Ellison,
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
All right, and now a motion for 9.2.
So moved.
Second.
Quick. And call the roll on that, please.
Turner,
Yes.
Con,
Yes.
Mayor Emmett,
Abstain.
Ellison,
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. That, I think, is all the business that we need to vote on. We go to item number 10 on our agenda, our board communications. Mr. GCCC.
Indeed. So, first things first, they immediately wanted to send their condolences, as well as they sent, I believe, 5 counselors between the schools from the Career Center. And they also, Dr. Deskins himself would see Daryl just about every day, so he was, so the Career Center wanted to send its condolences along with all of the other schools in Greene County who also wanted to just send their condolences to Yellow Springs and wanted to know if there was anything else that can be done, because everyone knows just about how tragic that can be, and knows his importance to this town as well as the district. Yeah, that being said, there was, the building is doing fine. It seems to be going along schedule so far, so that's pretty good. The airport project started. You can actually see the metal there. I'm not sure if there's also an airport hangar being built, because airport mechanics have been in such a decline that globally it's an issue, especially for smaller airports. Basically all of commercial has been recruiting mechanics to a point where even the Air Force Base is having issues maintaining mechanics because commercial can charge more, that kind of thing. So local airports, smaller airports are doing basically what is happening with us, which is they are building a hangar, supplying planes, supplying a full working, almost mini airport for students to be able to become airport mechanic or airplane mechanics. So that's about how serious that need is. And so it's being built alongside, and hopefully we'll be up and running by next year's school year. You're right. Speaking of next year's school year, 410 applications came in, so a pretty high number, and they're pretty short at the building. May have had some influence to have some more people come and at least apply and see what's available. They started doing something 3 years ago, and they're starting to see effects of it, and so they did a presentation on it called Positive Behavior Intervention Support, or PBIS, and it's more about teaching the right things to do rather than sort of immediately punishing for immediate wrong things being done. The other thing too are to show the expectations of the students that weren't maybe shown before. An example is 2 years ago, they would close the doors when there's time for class, and so students would have to go and check in order to get a pass in order to go to the classroom. And so they had an issue of 2,200 cases when they first started doing this, and this year it's already down to 600, or the following year was already down to 600, and it's looking like it'll be even less. So sort of showing that there is an expectation, people are immediately sort of stepping up to the task. And so that was another aspect to it. The other thing too is to reward regular good behavior, not just sort of exceptional good behavior, but you're doing the right thing and that's good, here's the reward for that. And they've mainly with the focus, of course, all of it being on professionalism. So, wearing your uniform every day without issue, which there is one at the Career Center, by the way, in case anyone was wondering why I said that. But also, if you already are attending class every 21 days in a row that you attend, you get to be in a, I forget what they call it, raffle almost, but like where your name could be picked. So there's sort of this rewarding really good behavior already. And then there was just sort of proud, this came out that a nursing student happened to drive by yesterday, all the commotion on Grinnell, and attempted to get out because they saw a body laying there, and someone yelled at them to get back in their car and leave. now it sort of makes more sense as to why. But it didn't when it happened, and so that student definitely came very freaked out, but it seems that that may have been the reason the cops were even called. So they were, but they were really proud of the student because that was their first immediate response when they saw someone on the side of the road. And Dr. Deskins just wanted to sort of, just say like, what a commending. However, then of course that turned into a very scary situation, but the student pulled through and was able to speak with police and everything, but it was just very problematic from the teachers and the nursing teachers' perspective of not without a question of a doubt. That was their first response. And so they just wanted to like, something is being done right. And sort of good on the nursing staff. That was just the initial response. I'm really happy about that. And that, the PBIs, I have some things here that they sort of gave out. I can make sure to get it out to you. It's pretty interesting that they sort of set goals, and throughout the entire, from the parking lot to every aspect of the building, these are our goals. This is what we expect of you, this is, what you should expect of each other, and then sort of a problem-solving aspect of behavior. If you're doing this, what can you do to be better? It's pretty interesting. I'll make sure to get that to Stephanie. That concludes my report from the Career Center.
Yellow Springs Development Corporation report. You want to do this one? You want me to do this one? Should we make Terry do it? Yeah, it's up to you. I don't feel like there's a whole lot to report. So as just to refresh everybody's memory, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation, which may not even be its official name at this point because it keeps changing on the legal documents, meets once a month, first Tuesdays of the month at noon, and involves two of us, two board members and the superintendent, two council members and the village manager, trustees from the Miami Township Trustees, Yellow Springs Community Foundation, Antioch College. I mentioned the township, I think I maybe think, and this is, the foundation, the chamber, there it is, the Chamber of Commerce. And so this is another way in which the various entities in town are trying to be more collaborative and work together and be in regular communication. Our meeting last week, I'm not sure there's a whole lot to report about that I'm remembering.
It's in the paper, I know that much.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say, I think that's probably about it.
Yeah, nothing from the school board's perspective, I would say. I don't know, maybe administration, but
No, and that is the current name.
It is. Oh, good.
yes.
So now it's the YSDC.
There was just I think it's
Thank
just
you
some confusion
very
early
much.
on.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
Which had legal ramifications, because if you call yourself one thing, then you fall under...
CIC or
CDC.
CDC.
Right,
CDC
exactly.
was the worst.
Okay. Other board member items.
I guess I'd like to appreciate our whole staff around this really tragic situation that just happened Tuesday afternoon, and I want to give everybody a lot of credit for rising to a terrible occasion, and I want to give credit to our students who were willing to put themselves forward, much like this nursing student you were referring to. So I just feel really proud of this district. I feel proud of our community, and these tragedies do happen, but boy, it's really wonderful when everybody pulls together in this kind of way and really supports each other and so forth. So just I want the community to feel reassured and understand that this was a pretty amazing response to a really, really awful situation. So thank you.
Here.
I'm going, by the way, and I have room in the car.
To the visitation.
Exactly. So I wanted to put that
Thank
to
you.
the staff that, or people who may need, I'll have open seats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other board member items? I guess I'm just gonna say, Terry, when is that meeting on school financing?
Oh, yeah.
Monday, February 24th.
Monday, February 24th, be there or be square.
6:30 here at Mills
Mills Lawn.
Lawn in the music room.
In the music room.
Oh, and is there a Black History something Friday?
Oh, at the high school, yeah, ISA.
Yeah, right.
It's at 2 o'clock.
This
I
Friday.
saw a post on it.
This,
Yes.
wait a minute, wait a minute,
That's
wait a
about
minute.
all I
Tomorrow.
know.
Yes,
Yeah, I
there is.
happened to
Tomorrow-
see
wait a
something
minute, it's
online.
on my-
Open
But I
discussion.
just,
He posted about it, wait a minute.
No, I didn't.
Isn't it too?
I saw.
I thought it might have been even after school, I thought maybe that's one.
I did see it on open discussion. I'm trying to find it.
Performing at YSHS Gymnasium this Friday, around, ISA says around 2 PM.
No, gotcha.
Well, because it's the assembly at the end of the
Yeah.
day, so, okay.
All right,
Can I have a motion to adjourn then, please?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Call the roll?
Vaughn,
Yes.
Mayor Hemmick,
Yes.
Ellison,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes. And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
So
We've been here
you
for a long
folks
time.
remember Michelle?
Of course, from
Yes,
the
I had him on
nutrition
a
group.
panel